You step onto the dew-damp grass just as the first slivers of sunlight spill across the yard, washing the feeder in pale gold and casting long shadows from the oak and maple branches above. The faint chirp of a distant cardinal threading through the morning quiet. A routine so familiar it almost fades into the background. And yet today, there's a subtle pause, an imperceptible hesitation in the flutter of wings that you can't quite place. The blue jay in the corner seems to linger longer than usual on the fence, its head tilting just so, catching the light in a way that makes its eyes appear sharp, aware, almost deliberate. A soft breeze stirs the leaves, and for a moment the ordinary sounds of the morning, the rustle of squirrels, the distant hum of traffic, seem muffled, as if the world has drawn back slightly to let you notice this. The feeder sits untouched, yet the chickadees hover closer to the maple, their movements more synchronized, more attentive than you remember, a subtle tension threading through the air that is impossible to explain. The sunlight glints off a single red cardinal perched at the edge of the yard, facing your kitchen window, and you swear it waits there, still as a sentinel, watching, measuring, almost aware of your presence in a way that makes your heart beat quiet and deliberate. If you're new here, consider subscribing before you leave, because what you're about to witness will change the way you look at every bird that visits your yard. And even this small gesture of being here with me matters more than you realize. The cardinal shifts slightly, tilts its head, and for a fraction of a second, the air feels charged, heavy with a quiet expectation. The ordinary morning has bent into something that feels charged with intention, and here is where things start to shift ever so subtly. A tiny leaf falls from the maple, and the wind doesn't scatter it. Instead, it drifts down toward the cardinal, almost as if nature itself is aware, almost as if the bird knows this is no longer just another morning. But the instant when the ordinary bends, and you realize, without understanding how, that something unseen has settled, claiming this space, and yet it is patient, quiet, almost gentle, and you feel it before you can define it. That faint sense that the yard is no longer quite yours alone, but shared, measured in small movements, in waiting, in glances that hold longer than they should. And as the cardinal fluffs its feathers and shifts its gaze just so, you can't help but wonder what it is it has noticed, and what it has decided, and you sense, just for a heartbeat, that this morning is different, that something has begun that will unfold slowly, almost imperceptibly, and yet its presence is undeniable, and that is only the beginning. You know that subtle pause in the morning when everything seems familiar yet slightly off, the way the wind carries the faint scent of dew and earth, the way shadows stretch just a little longer across the grass, and you feel it, that quiet awareness that something is observing, acknowledging your presence without fanfare. You have felt it before, perhaps not as clearly, but in small moments, like when a robin freezes mid-hop on the lawn as you step outside, or when the leaves shift just as you reach the porch, and it is almost imperceptible, yet unmistakable. The world seems to adjust around you, tiny signals aligning in patterns only you can sense, and it draws you in quietly, letting you recognize the ordinary as something layered and alive. The way your hands wrap around a warm cup of coffee and the birds respond to your movement, the cadence of your steps subtly mirrored in their glances, as if they are aware of the rhythm of your day, the small choices you make, and you remember times when a crow perched on the fence seemed to hesitate, to consider your presence, and your chest tightened not from fear, but from a recognition, an unspoken understanding that you were being noticed in ways beyond words. You know that feeling, the one that makes you pause and look closer, heart just slightly faster, breath catching for a beat, and it carries a quiet comfort and curiosity all at once, as though the world itself has granted you a small acknowledgment, an intimate nod from nature that is easy to miss, but impossible to forget once you notice, and in that shared silence, with the living space around you, with the shifting branches and the subtle hum of early morning, you feel understood, you feel aligned with something beyond yourself, and it is gentle and reflective, calling you to pay attention, to remember these tiny interactions, these fleeting moments that hold a resonance you did not know was waiting for you. And it is in this space that your senses awaken, curiosity stirs, and the ordinary becomes quietly extraordinary, and you realize that others may never feel it this way. But you do, and that realization is both grounding and unsettling, in the most delicate way, as though you have been let in on something just beneath the surface. And it is only the beginning of noticing how the day, and perhaps the birds themselves, will continue to reveal their subtle attentiveness. And then you notice it, the way the cardinal shifts slightly. Not just once, but with a rhythm that repeats across days, landing first on the fence post, then moving to the small holly bush near the corner of the yard, each perch chosen deliberately, as if mapping something invisible only it can see. The chickadees in the maple follow subtle patterns you have never observed before, hopping in sequence, their calls quiet, almost intentional, creating a network of movement that seems to acknowledge your presence without a word. The sun rises higher, and the shadows shift across the feeder. Yet the cardinal remains in its spot for a heartbeat longer than expected, turning its head slowly to watch the direction you emerge from the door. The little flicker of its wings is precise, measured, as if confirming something beyond your comprehension. A breeze ruffles the leaves, carrying the faint scent of wet earth and pine, and the stillness in the air makes every tiny sound, wing beat, rustle, distant caw, feel amplified, layered with meaning. And you sense that this is not random, that the movements, the pauses, the exact way a feather catches the light, all compose a silent message meant for someone paying attention, and perhaps that someone is you. And as you watch, the cardinals adjust again, almost imperceptibly, coordinating without apparent cue, a quiet choreography you did not know existed, one that suggests a deeper layer to what you have always thought of as ordinary backyard activity. And if you lean in, if you slow your breathing and let your eyes trace each branch, each feathered motion, you begin to perceive it, the world behind the world, where awareness and intention are written in subtle gestures. And the yard, familiar yet newly strange, feels like it has secrets it has been waiting to show you all along. And there is a quiet thrill in realizing that you are part of a pattern few ever notice, a hidden life that pulses around you while the ordinary unfolds. And you are both observer and participant in the small, deliberate signals of the birds that inhabit this space. Researchers studying songbirds have noticed patterns that almost seem too precise to be coincidental. For example, cardinals and chickadees often return to the exact same perch within a few minutes of the same time every morning, tracking subtle cues in the environment and adjusting their behavior with a consistency that hints at memory far beyond simple instinct. A study at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology found that even small songbirds can recognize individual humans and alter their response depending on prior interactions. And while this is not immediately visible, the way the cardinal tilts its head, the sequence in which the chickadees approach the feeder, the deliberate pauses between their calls, all reflect a pattern that researchers call anticipatory behavior, meaning the birds are not just reacting randomly. They are predicting, registering, and incorporating tiny details about your presence into their routine. And it is not limited to one species alone. The mixed flocks in your yard respond to each other's movements with timing that seems to acknowledge unseen rules. So when you notice a blue jay suddenly pausing on the fence or a nuthatch hesitating mid-hop, it is not imagination. It is evidence of a subtle cognition that integrates observation, memory, and decision. And the science translates emotionally as a quiet acknowledgment, a signal that these birds are tracking your presence, your rhythm, the way you move through the yard. And even though it may feel like something mystical, there is a tangible, factual grounding in their behavior that makes the wonder feel possible and believable, as if the yard has become a stage where invisible calculations are happening in perfect harmony. The ordinary morning is threaded with these precise, watchful patterns, and in noticing them, you become aware of the deeper reality of attention and recognition that exists all around you. You step closer to the feeder, the chill of morning still brushing your hands as you reach for the handle of the gate, and the cardinal shifts its perch ever so slightly, a tilt of the head that feels deliberate, almost conversational, as though it has noticed the way your fingers curl around the metal. The chickadees pause mid-hop between branches, their tiny bodies frozen for a heartbeat as your shadow crosses the grass, and you catch the faint quiver of feathers, the subtle ruffle that mirrors your own slow, measured breath, each movement between you and the birds building a rhythm of quiet recognition. The sunlight glints off the crimson of the Cardinal's chest, warming the tips of your fingertips through the cold air, and you realize that the tiny sounds of wings and calls are no longer just background, but a dialogue, delicate and nuanced, almost imperceptible, yet it carries a weight that touches something deep in you. The nuthatch on the lower branch shifts toward the feeder just as you step closer, leaving the smallest gap for your presence. The way it pauses for a fraction longer than before, the tilt of its head, the subtle twitch of its claws, they all convey a sense of awareness, of familiarity, and a warmth blooms in your chest. The quiet intimacy of being seen without words, of being acknowledged in a rhythm you had never known existed. And as you inhale the crisp morning air, the small motions of feathers, the soft scuttling across bark, the faint shimmer of light on wings, all knit together to create a feeling that you are no longer an observer, but a participant, a companion in a world that has quietly included you. And the subtle beauty of this shared moment makes you pause, heart steady, eyes tracing every motion, as though the yard itself is leaning in toward you. And it is in these gentle, repeated gestures, this soft choreography of movement and presence, that the bond begins to form, unspoken, gradual, undeniable. The morning light deepens, spilling gold across the yard, and the Cardinal moves again, not merely from branch to branch, but in a pattern that draws the eye, a slow, deliberate arc that feels measured and intentional. The Chickadees flit in harmony, their tiny calls threading through the space like a quiet symphony, each sound echoing off the maple bark and the fence, carrying an almost imperceptible rhythm. And for the first time, you notice the subtle choreography between species, a layered attentiveness that suggests awareness beyond your usual perception. A nuthatch pauses mid-hop, its gaze following yours as you adjust the position of the feeder, almost as if it understands your movements and integrates them into its own sequence. The light shifts again, dappling the ground through leaves, and the shadows lengthen, stretching across the yard in a way that seems to synchronize with the pulse of life around you. The air itself feels charged with anticipation. The tiny motions of wings and claws and feathers combine into a pattern, quiet, precise, yet undeniably present. And it gives you the strange sense that the yard has expanded, that its boundaries are no longer defined by fences or gates, but by observation and connection, as though every flutter, every tilt of a head, is an acknowledgement of you being here, part of the ongoing pulse of the space. And in that realization, your breath slows, your chest softens, and you begin to feel a quiet wonder that is larger than yourself. A sense of existence in this rhythm of awareness that has been building without notice. And just as you lean into the moment, a soft rustle at the far corner of the yard, subtle yet deliberate, hints that there is more unfolding beyond what you can yet see. And you know, with a quiet certainty, that this is only the surface of what the day, and perhaps the birds themselves, will reveal next. There is a quiet weight to the morning now, a sense that the yard is not merely a space, but a living pattern that includes you within it. The Cardinal perches on the edge of the fence, wings catching the light in a way that makes its presence feel intentional. The Chickadees hop in measured intervals, their calls soft but precise, and you feel the rhythm between you and them, an almost imperceptible connection that grows with each careful observation. Many people believe that birds only react to instinct or hunger, but something about this feels difficult to ignore. The way they time their movements to your arrival, the subtle pauses, the way a nuthatch glances in your direction before settling again. It suggests awareness layered with something more, something that seems to acknowledge your role in this small ecosystem. The yard stretches out in dappled light, and with every rustle of leaves, every tiny flutter of wing, you sense that the ordinary and the extraordinary are entwined here, that what you witness is both deeply mundane and quietly profound. There is no declaration, no sound, only the deliberate sequence of gestures and attentiveness that make the space feel alive in a new way. And as you inhale the crisp air and notice the soft shimmer of sunlight on feathers, the subtle interplay of shadow and movement, you feel a reflective calm, a sense of being part of something larger than the sum of visible actions. And you begin to wonder what layers of attention and meaning exist just beyond perception, the kind that you may never fully name, yet which shape the rhythm of the morning in ways you are only beginning to notice. You pause at the edge of the yard, the crisp morning air settling around you, and notice how the sunlight catches the dew on each blade of grass. Glinting softly like tiny prisms, the cardinal remains perched, still, its eyes attentive but calm, and for a moment, the world seems to inhale with you, the rustle of leaves, the faint whisper of wind, even the distant hum of a neighbor's mower, all recede into a gentle quiet. The chickadees move in subtle patterns, hopping lightly from branch to branch without sound, their presence delicate, deliberate, and in this space you feel a deep sense of ease, a quiet warmth spreading through your chest as though the rhythm of the yard has synchronized with your own. The holly bush casts a gentle shadow over the feeder, a soft protection, and the movement of a nuthatch along the trunk is almost meditative, a slow, graceful arc. The yard is suspended in a moment that is both ordinary and profound, every detail amplified by the stillness around you. Your own breath measured, soft, almost imperceptible, and it allows the sensations of observation, connection, and presence to settle fully. The sunlight now warm on your shoulders, the tiny flick of wings, the gentle twitch of leaves, the quiet acknowledgment of every small gesture, all combine to form a stillness that carries the weight of meaning without words. And in this calm, you realize how deeply this space, these creatures, and these small patterns have drawn you in, how the ordinary gestures have become intimate, and that realization lingers, folded into the soft cadence of the morning, allowing a slow, reflective understanding to bloom quietly within you. The light in the yard has softened now, spilling through the canopy in thin, golden ribbons that move slowly with the morning breeze, and the cardinal shifts its wings in the quiet, each movement deliberate yet serene. The chickadees flit through the branches in measured patterns, their small calls a gentle undercurrent, weaving a tapestry of sound and presence that seems both ordinary and impossibly intimate. The nuthatch pauses on a limb, head tilted, as though absorbing the entire rhythm of the yard and the quiet presence of your gaze. And you feel it too, a slow settling in your chest, the pulse of attention and connection wrapping around you like a subtle current. Many people believe these moments pass unnoticed, yet something about the way the movements align, the soft shiver of leaves, the glint of sunlight on tiny feathers, it feels difficult to ignore, as if the world itself has paused to acknowledge your place within it. The air tastes faintly of pine and dew, and the silence between calls becomes meaningful, stretching long enough for reflection, for understanding that you are part of an intricate pattern larger than yourself, and you breathe in, letting the quiet expand through you, feeling a lingering warmth that is both humbling and expansive, a calm recognition that these creatures and this space have included you without words. And in that quiet, something shifts inside, a reflective awe that persists even as the light moves and the shadows stretch differently across the grass. And as you exhale, you realize that this connection does not end. It continues in the pauses, in the stillness, in the subtle rhythm of life you have only just begun to notice. Thank you for staying until the very end, for being here to witness these small, deliberate gestures that carry meaning beyond the obvious. If you enjoy stories that uncover the quiet mysteries around us, consider subscribing before you leave, because there are still so many layers out there that most of us have never truly seen. And as the birds move softly through the yard, and the light shifts yet again, you carry with you the sense that something delicate and unseen continues to unfold. Somewhere out there tonight, a small feathered presence may still remember you. And perhaps, just perhaps, it never stopped.